Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true firsthand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. One of the most profound things about hosting this show is having the opportunity to see myself and the experiences I've had with psychedelics reflected back to me and expanded upon by my guests. I imagine someone listening right now knows exactly what I mean when I say some of these experiences are so unique and awe-inspiring that you end up believing you're the only one that would understand it, only to then have someone else share a similar experience that immediately validates you and brings you closer to that individual as, in a way, you've moved through a shared experience with him or her, and they are able to, in many cases, fill in the quote-unquote missing links, like puzzle pieces waiting to be assembled, for the full impact of your experiences to be understood and integrated. Today's guest on the show is someone who, when I first met and we recorded an episode on the Highly Optimized podcast, I was able to notice these types of occurrences happening, both in our passions and hobbies and in life in general, and in the brief conversation we had surrounding plant medicines and psychedelics as well. This being said, I am beyond excited to dive back in with him today to have the opportunity to gift this type of experience I've laid out here to any of you listening who may be able to fill in the missing pieces required to be able to access the full impact of your plant medicine experiences and life experiences as a whole. He is the host of the Ascension of the Chessman podcast, is someone who is passionate about the topics of philosophy, psychology, and spirituality, to name but a few, and is someone who, as soon as you meet, you will be able to notice his warm energy and zest for life, which allow him to be a battery charger for the world at large. So, without further ado, please help me in welcoming my man, Andre Mytty, to the show. Andre, what's up, my man?
Hey, man. So happy to be here. So happy to be, connecting with your energy again, too, brother.
Yeah.
You're such a light in this world and inspiration for me. You're just mirroring back to me what I'm putting out. So it's a pleasure and such an honor to be here, brother. So thank you.
Absolutely, man. You are more than welcome. It was an easy decision to have you back on. It was actually funny, man. When I reached out to you, I was like, hey, man, have you been on this one on psychedelics? I feel like we did a bunch of podcasting in a couple of days. But, what happens when you and I get on the call, and what happened today, too, is we've already been chatting for 90 minutes before we hit record. We had to I had to pry my fingers to hit record and be like, all right, we got to start this podcast because we're already creating so much fire here. And those kind of people, man, I'm so grateful to have people like that in my life and to have you in my life, man. And, it's so fun to be able to, as Paul Chek says, see the best parts and the challenging parts, right? Because it happens everywhere. But especially when you get to see the best parts of you that you might not recognize about yourself reflected back in someone. Because as Paul always says, if you spot it, you got it. And I think a lot of people only think about that, or I'll make it more personal. I believe I only thought about that when it came to negative aspects. So maybe, someone is, late a lot, right? And you're like, oh, they're always late, but really you're late sometimes too, right? And so you see it because you have it. But I think it also works and is actually even more powerful to think about the good things as well. Because, I've had clients before reflect back to me like, wow, man, it's amazing. I see these things in you and, I'm so grateful to have you. And I'm like, hey, listen, if you can see those things in me, that means you have them within you. And what I am supplying for you is the opportunity to see that you have that in you as well. And I think that's one of the coolest ways we can learn from each other. And definitely one of the ways I learned from you as well, man. I mean, especially talking to other podcasters, dude, it's so fun because we get to have that shared experience,
Yeah, dude. Talking with podcasts is always a little easier because it's we're so used to doing this. It's just second nature. I talk to so many people. It's they get super nervous once we hit record. And it's for me, it's just there's no off switch. It's I'm always recording.
Yes.
So I always say some of my best conversations were never recorded. And that's the irony of it is I'm doing my best to keep the conversations, full of curiosity and wonder and, just interesting topics that don't get talked about enough, just trying to further the conversation. Like it's really been a dream come true to be able to get to do this as a hobby and a passion, because for so many years listening to podcasts, I always knew I wanted to do it, and I was already doing it without even recording, having these conversations. So it's been amazing, brother. And psychedelics have been a huge role in, getting me to where I'm at, and, having these crucial revelations to steer me in the direction I needed to go, just to evolve and grow as a human, to my highest potential. So.
Yeah, it's fascinating, man. Everything you just said is exactly accurate for me. And, when I first started, not even getting into podcasting, but like listening to a lot of podcasts, my girlfriend and other people, especially the dispensary, because I would go on tangents in there, right? I would take some Katam, enter a super high vibe, and just, blow some people out. Like I'd have some unreal conversations there about metaphysics, spirituality, the concept of God. And meanwhile, it was funny because, we had registers set up that were like, it was like 7 registers right in a line. And so there would be people that would be at another register being like, what are they talking about down there? Because they'd see me and some other person like, going wild. And that's why I was a terrible dispensary agent, because I would end up speaking with people I remember there was certain times where legitimately I had like a 90-minute conversation with someone while they were at my register, like straight up. And and I allowed them to, the reason I was doing it is to help them understand what cannabis was doing, and all of it was good. But you know how it works in big dispensaries. They just want people in and out. They're like, hey, you're taking too long with customers. I'm like, yeah, I'm making sure that they're only going to come to this dispensary ever again,
Yeah, so dude, I'm the same way. And it's ironic because, here in Nebraska, we just have Delta 8 and Delta 10, THCO, THCP, HHC. There's new ones, being developed all the time. But, it's really ironic because, there's gaps in between customers. Sometimes you'll go an hour or two without a customer. Sometimes you'll get 6 customers in an hour, even more than that. But like, I'm the same way, man. Like I'm so passionate about cannabis and like to share the good news with the world about this miracle plant. Like I'm totally down to, answer any questions or, just tell them things they might not know or had no idea about regarding cannabis. And I get into those hour-long conversations too. And, when you're by the store by yourself and you have no one to talk to, sometimes it's like a breath of fresh air when, you have a lot of downtime and stuff. And so it's ironic how the dispensaries differ in non-legal states to the legal states where they're busy all the time, I'm sure, in comparison.
And that's how mine was. I mean, we'd see 100 people in a day. Like when we first started, it was like you were saying, like 6 people an hour. Sometimes it'd be like hilarious and we'd just get to leave early because no one was coming in. But eventually got to the point where there was 100 people coming in. And it started to be this hilarious thing where people would form lines to talk to me. So they'd wait to talk to me. And I felt super awkward about it because I never wanted to like be that person. I never wanted to be a disruptor, first of all. I mean, even though guilty as charged, I can be. But, with just how much I don't look at time as a thing. So I'd be like, what? I've been talking to the person for 5 minutes. And it's like, no, you've been talking to them for an hour and a half. I'm like, oh, whoops, we were having a good conversation, Right. And, but it was fascinating, and that's one of the things that really shaped my experience with cannabis specifically, because cannabis is in the realm of psychedelics, right? And so allowing myself to be able to learn from so many people who were coming in and had other experiences maybe I had never experienced or different conditions they were interacting with cannabis for, it really helped me realize that these plants with all psychedelics, they're put here not for everyone, but for certain people, right? And for the certain people they're meant for, what I always say is, people ask me, should I do psychedelics? I'm like, listen, I'm not your mother or father. I can't tell you whether or not this is right for you. All I can say is that if you're curious and you have just a curiosity to learn about them, that is in most cases a sign that these might be right for you, right? And I always say might because, again, I'm never going to say these are meant for anyone, right? And even for me, right, there are times where I'm like, hey, I've answered the call, I can hang up the phone for a little while, right? Or I got the message, I can hang up the phone, as Terrence McKenna says. And so these things they can be so powerful. And I think the biggest challenge with regards to cannabis is that, most people use it unconsciously. They have no idea what this plant is capable of doing, what its real history is, what the purpose of it is, and what it can do for the human experience, and how much it's excited to help you out, right? It's the feminine, like the feminine wants to comfort. And so it's waiting for direction. But the biggest mistake most people make, and I made it for years too, is that we've never taught about the idea of intention, right? Like we might hear it in a Hallmark card as someone like, wow, that sounds cute, right? But we don't actually understand like the idea that we are manifestors. We are God created in his image, right? And for anyone who gets charged off the term God, change out source, whatever, I've just done my fair share of, decoupling with the term God so I can use it. But,
Right.
It's like we are source energy, right? And so our whole notion here is to distinguish between good and evil so we can become better manifestors. That's what I choose to believe. And so intention is kind of like our daily practice of starting to understand that we can create our own reality. And so when we apply that to plant medicines, especially cannabis, which, the thing about cannabis that I love is that it tunes you into the subtleties of your body, which most psychedelics do. But the big download I had recently is that, well, the difference is that most people don't eat a gram of mushrooms and then go do daily tasks, right? Like fold their laundry, take the trash out, etc. Maybe some people do, but most people don't, right? But with cannabis, it's very common to hear someone go like, hey, what are you doing today? Oh, I'm going to get stoned and then go do my laundry, right? Or I'm going to get stoned and then do like clean my house, right? And so the idea here is that if you can make the intention to say, like, even in your mundane tasks, like folding laundry, taking out trash, whatever, if you can flip the script on, like, oh, I'm taking the trash out because it needs to get taken out and be able to interact with something like cannabis and make an intention to connect to that experience. And then be able to, when you realize you're doing that, realize like, wow, this is literally what happened to me this last week. I was folding my laundry and I interacted with some cannabis beforehand. And I was folding my laundry and I noticed that monkey mind of mine wanting to be like, oh, this is annoying. Just like get this done so you can move on to the next task of your day. And then I was like, no, actually, this is part of my life, right? Like this folding this laundry is part of my life. And I know that when I fold my laundry and I have it all put away and I wake up the next day, I'm so excited to find it where it's supposed to be, right? Yeah. And not have the bag of laundry sitting there. And so for me, one of the things that was interesting was realizing like, oh, I can actually reframe why I fold laundry, why I take the trash out, why I do all these things and make it an act of self-love. And so what I changed it to, and this is the whole idea of flipping the script, but in language work, but like when you do it in an altered state of mind, you're more suggestible because you're in a different brainwave state. So you're actually like somewhat in the subconscious where all of your unconscious patterns and programs lie. And so I was able to rehash that as like, oh, I fold my laundry and put it away on time because I love myself. And I know that it means a lot to me when I wake up the next day and everything's folded. And so then I was able to actually connect to that experience and realize every article of clothing I put away was another act of self-love. And so I think that's why cannabis is so powerful to me, because it's the only one that really people are already using to interact with their daily lives, like not just have a PEAK experience with, but like actually start to learn that like, hey, to the degree that you can connect to like folding laundry and like, doing like the mundane tasks in your day that make up a lot of your life, not only are you going to have more connection in your life based on that, but then when you hang out with your friends and you're having those really PEAK experiences of connection, you're going to be able to connect deeper because you're teaching your body through like essentially Joe Dispenza type stuff, right? You're teaching your body to not be reliant on the known past, but to be reliant on the inspired future, like how you want to feel. And so when you start getting more in touch with connection or anything, it's like a hobby. You play guitar more, you're going to get better at it, right? So you practice connection more, you're going to be better at connecting with people. You're going to be better at connecting to your purpose. You're going to be able to bring the connections and people and places and things into your life that are relevant for you. And I think that's one of the secret superpowers that cannabis specifically has to offer. And I learned that really being at the dispensary, right? Because, I'm doing mundane tasks like checking people out in a register, taking breaks, whatever. But yet at the same time, I was connecting to those things because I was excited to talk to people and everything became that same experience. And so it's fascinating to think back to that. But it was only a week or two ago that I really actually integrated and realized, oh, that's a thing. And now I'm actually applying it to my life with some really cool results, man. It's fascinating.
It's funny you ended that rant on bringing up integrating that, because that's the revelation I had as you were talking is, I was thinking cannabis is unique in the sense you can integrate it while you're experiencing it.
Yes.
I just had that like download compared to other psychedelics, because other psychedelics, it's like it gives you homework to do. It's like when you get done, you got to, look back what you learned, how are you going to integrate this into your life and make it a daily practice of, okay, I reached that peak. Now I have that memory to look back on when I'm going through a rough experience or I get a flat tire, and how am I going to respond versus react in that experience? Yeah, cannabis is such a great teacher in that way of like, you can actively integrate the lessons learned and the downloads that come while you're still experiencing it. And it just brings that full sense of awareness to the surface. And a lot of people see that as paranoia, or it comes up as paranoia. But I think Joe Rogan's made a great point on this of like, is that really paranoia, or is that like revealing to you a lot that you've refused to look at or acknowledge as a problem in your life?
Exactly. And that's a lot of what we teach in Connect with Cannabis, right? Is realizing that even the quote unquote undesirable results that some people get with cannabis can be cast as desirable once you start framing cannabis as like, and plant medicines in general, as a self-development practice, rather than something you do to party or something you do because it's fun or whatever, which it can be those things, right? But also realizing that like, hey, this is the real nature of this plant, is to help me in my experience of life. And sometimes, just like our mother has to like really have a talk with us sometimes, right? Like sometimes cannabis is going to be like, listen, the thing you need right now that's really going to help you might not be the most comfortable thing. And if you can hear the lesson in this and start to integrate and realize what's happening, you can learn so much about the shadow. You can learn so much about all this stuff, because what I tell people is when you're experiencing anxiety, paranoia, these things, it's a good sign you're coming up against your edge of what your ego is comfortable with revealing to you. And so if you decide to have faith and tell yourself you're safe and go into that, then what's in there can be some of the most profound things to learn. Like looking back to all of my experiences with psychedelics, the ones that have been the challenging ones have been the ones that I've got the most from every single time.
100%.
Every single time, because they've been the ones that like literally, what is it really when you face a challenge or quote unquote bad trip or any of these things, it means you're literally about to change your life, right? Or potentially get terrified because you don't want to change your life. And again, I'm not going to tell anyone what they should or should not be doing, but in my experiences, that's when like you can hear the idea of like, hey, you need to surrender when you do psychedelics, right? And it sounds like something fun, right? But generally, it's like your last ditch effort in a psychedelic experience where you're like, I'm about to have a really big ordeal if I don't take care of this. And so I surrender into it and just say, okay, hands off the wheel. And then I get the biggest download that actually I come out of that experience 9 times out of 10 laughing at, because it was like right under my nose. And it was the thing that like now I see it happening for me, but it was scary for my ego at first, because my ego was like, is part of us about to die? Right. And then reframing it as like, no, part of us is about to become alive. Right. Yeah. And so it's very interesting, man. It's fascinating.
Yeah, dude. It's like you're in a duel with your higher self or spirit, and you got your guns drawn. You see your higher self as a threat, and it's like your ego trying to defend itself. And you all of a sudden realize like, okay, I got to put the guns down. Like there is no war to fight here. And the more I keep the guns up and try to fight a war, the horrible experience that's going to come out of that. And it's just going to continue to get worse. And yeah, it is a latch ditch effort. And you do have to completely surrender to get the most out of the experience and get that to that peak experience you're looking for. Because I always say, man, I think it's not about, you got to keep going back and do it and do it and do it. But like, until you get that peak experience, you're really missing out, because that peak experience to me is the realization we're all one, we're all one source, we're all one organism. Like what we do to others affects ourselves. And just having these revelations that, we're taught in kindergarten that seem like a cheap bumper sticker you'd put on a car, but it's like, it's so simple and true. But once you can apply those lessons to your life, it changes everything. And that's the process of integration afterwards. But you hear like Steve Jobs, like he had this massive revelation on acid, and he goes on to create Apple. Like, I think you can see the effect like that peak experience can have directly on someone's life. If you measure the aftermath afterwards, it's like you can see the impact that experience had. And the way people put it up there with like, it's like having a baby, or it's like being born, or, these profound life experiences, they put it right up there towards the top. And I think that speaks to what it's hitting on. And, where it's really hitting you deep within yourself, to the point that people would go on to say that and notice its effects long after the experience. And that means never even having to do it again, for example, and still feeling the effects of that peak experience and, the meaning it had. And I also say, like, if you've had those rough experiences, you've had those quote unquote bad trips, like, there's nothing in life that can scare you to the level that did. So everything in life, those tough experiences become just a tad bit easier to deal with, knowing what you've overcome in those dimensions or realms, you could call them, on plant medicine or psychedelics,
Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show. What's up, ladies and gents? I wanted to take a second while I had your ear to share with all of you a very important announcement. Anyone who has been listening to the show for some time now knows that I am passionate about coaching and helping other coaches up-level their coaching practice. What I have noticed in working with hundreds of coaches is that coaches of all different types are facing challenges with being able to get their clients strong, consistent results, understand where to put their energy to allow their practices to thrive, stand out in the vastity of coaches, move from imposter syndrome into trusting themselves, and ultimately make the money necessary to be financially independent in their coaching practice. The root of these issues comes down to a lack of connection with your creative force as a coach and entrepreneur. This is why we at Highly Optimized have created the Connect with Cannabis 10-week coaching certification program. The reason that cannabis is the focus of our program is because cannabis acts as imagination medicine. And in order to break free of these challenges, you must first be able to imagine yourself as the coach that is successful and has been able to break free of these challenges. When you are able to truly imagine and connect with the most powerful version of yourself, you can find the clarity to build your business, your authentic voice to speak directly to your clients, and the faith that you can overcome everything standing in your way. Once you have experienced and learned how to achieve these results for yourself, you will be able to offer this same unique skill set in your coaching practice to support your clients in overcoming their limiting beliefs and allow them to experience the breakthrough results that will make you stand out as the world-class coach you are. In this program, you will learn the science behind cannabis, how to experience the healing powers of cannabis, and how to facilitate these healing powers with your clients. With personalized one-on-one support on how to apply these frameworks into your business and weekly group calls within a community of coaches just like you will be equipped with a unique skill set that will allow you to get consistent, powerful results with your clients, feel confident in your coaching abilities, and allow you to gain financial independence while having the opportunity to wake up each day excited to share your important work with the world. For anyone listening who is hearing the call to set yourself apart and develop a unique set of coaching skills not found anywhere else in the world, jump over to the link in our Instagram bio and book a complimentary call with me today. Together, we will go over your current challenges in your business, your goals for your business, and decide together whether you qualify for a seat in the program. The next class begins April 20th, and spots are filling up quickly to be a part of the budding movement that is cannabis coaching. So book your call today and position yourself as a leading voice of how to work with this sacred plant medicine in your practice. Thank you all for your continued support and enjoy the show. The universe loves to speak to me in analogies and really goofy analogies. So one that just came to me that pretty much frames every quote unquote almost bad experience I've ever had. So think about it like this, right? You own 20 guitars And in your head, you're like, is this a problem? Right? Like, do I own too many guitars? And then someday or one day, someone who's a coach or mentor to you is coming to your house. And so you're like freaking out, like, oh my God, are they going to think I'm an addict? I have like 20 guitars in my room, right? Oh my God, what are they going to do? Right. And so they finally get there and they're like, wow, it's a lot of guitars. And you're like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I have a problem. And they're like, oh, it's fine. But I mean, out of curiosity, like, you're going to run out of room for guitars. Are there any guitars that you'd like to sell to get new ones? And you're like, oh yeah, I could do that. Right. And so the analogy is essentially that when you're facing a challenging experience, it's because you think you have a problem, right? That no one else has, or that it's this thing, it's a secret, right? And you like when that plant medicine shows you it, right? It's you seeing it. And you're like, what am I really going to think about myself? Or how am I going to judge myself when I see this? And then you see it and you're like, oh, actually, that's not a problem at all. And I can actually use that part of me to foster something great now that I see it. It was just like, I didn't want to look at it for so long that I kept thinking everyone was going to judge me for it. I was going to judge me for it, any of these things, right? Where in reality, it's just a flipping of the script. And what you brought up next with the peak experience, you know, I heard this doctor talk about this once and it makes perfect sense. What I really believe psychedelics are here for is, just like you said, not to continue doing them over and over and over again, right? Again, not to judge anyone who does that, right? Everyone has their own path. But what I've understood psychedelics to be now is the reminder, right, of what life could be and can be when lived at full potential. And so for modern day, right, where, you know, it's not really feasible to go be a monk for 20 years. People are in the Western world. They have cell phones. They have these things, right? And so they're really in this matrix. And to the degree that like you've never had a very spiritual experience, you don't even really know how much of the matrix you're in. I mean, it goes, I mean, I'm constantly figuring out more and more things. Yeah. I mean, it's literally the framework of everything. So it's not that the matrix is bad, but there's certain components of it that you might have picked up that you didn't really pick up because you wanted to, but because someone maybe taught you it and you're not aware that you can live life a different way. And so when we interact with these psychedelics in the intentional way, right, the way that you're actually going to really understand what the purpose of these are and what they can bring forth, what can happen. And what has happened to me is that you can have a PEAK, peak experience, right? Like, oh my God, I broke through on, you know, a big dose of mushrooms or something, and you feel that oneness. And then in that experience, and after that experience, you start getting downloads of like, wow, I haven't used a guitar analogy again. I haven't played guitar in a while, you know, like, man, like what else helped me feel, or like what else felt in the same like realm as what I just felt when I was on those mushrooms. Right. And so then it's like, well, I haven't played guitar in a while. Wow, I've been working too much. And, you know, maybe my work isn't aligned with me. Right. And so these are the dark nights of the soul people come up against, right? And why they keep going back for another experience. Cause like, no, I need to feel that feeling again. It's like, no, how you feel that feeling constantly after is you actually do the work that the medicine showed you. Like maybe you realized in that, like, I want to sell hot dogs on the beach, but right now I'm a lawyer. And so like, what are my friends going to think if I quit my law practice and all these things? And how are my kids going to eat and all these things? Right. And so if you're able to start integrating those things and say you decide, screw it, I'm leaving the law office and I'm going to go make the hot dog stand on the beach. The first day you do that and you're on the beach and you're selling your hot dogs and you're having a blast, you start getting these wild synchronicities where maybe you meet the love of your life, right? Who comes to buy a hot dog, right? Or something like that. Or at the same time, maybe what happens is, you know, you're sitting there and you just have this blissed out moment where you're able to make enough money that you leave at noon and you go hang out with your kids the rest of the day. And so in that experience, you're then getting a PEAK, peak experience, which is the peak behind the veil, right? In daily life. And that is where life itself becomes a psychedelic. And I think that is really why psychedelics are here, to remind us, like the Bible says, if you want to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must first enter the mind of a child. It's allowing us to remember how to enter the mind of a child, because when we enter that mind, everything is a psychedelic. Like if you've ever watched a 3-year-old run around, it's like they're coming out of a very long come out of a 5-MeO DMT experience, right? Where they're slowly
100%.
touching ground over like 9 years. And so it's just fascinating. You know, I love this stuff.
Yeah, dude. I can't say it enough, man. I think, you know, I mentioned earlier how they played a crucial role in my life and, you know, really changed my life path. I mean, for me, I started smoking cannabis every day, my senior year of high school, because, you know, you have that initial revelation. It took me multiple times to feel it the first time. You know, for some people, they can't experience their first time, but I didn't really, because it's weird because you're still figuring out what being high actually is. And you're like, oh, this is what it is once you actually feel it. And, you know, they always say you're always chasing that first high or whatever, but yeah, it just revealed a lot to me about how much we'd been lied to about this plant and how much potential it had to literally change the world. And on an individual level and on a collective level, on an industrial level, on so many levels. Yeah, it just like totally opened my mind up to like, okay, we're being lied to about some things. Maybe I need to learn more about what's going on in the world and, go on this path of self-exploration. And, I was coming from a Catholic upbringing. I was forced into Catholic school. So, had to wear uniforms and, that whole thing. It was ironic, man. Like, just, because you're so sheltered in that environment of that's all you see, because that's all you're surrounded with is people reinforcing those belief systems. And once I stepped outside of that and found out about the massive pedophilia going on within the Catholic Church, it really creeped me out. And I was like, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Mm-hmm. And, because for me, the way I grew up, the path to spirituality was always in the church. And I didn't realize you could have that direct communication with that higher power directly. And it wasn't until I found psychedelics and truly explored them in that way and had those downloads come through that I was able to have that revelation that like, I don't need church to be spiritual. I don't need church to, fulfill me every week to keep me alive. And, there's an argument to be said, I'm not saying going to church is wrong or right. Like if it works for you, go ahead and keep doing it. If it's not broke, don't try to fix it. But
yes.
For me, I just realized that I was like codependent on the church to like fulfill me spiritually. I just wasn't vibing with it anymore. I was stuck in a lot of fear of conspiracies and was looking into a lot of the end time stuff with the Mayan prophecies in 2012. And, that brought up a lot of fear for me, like being a Christian. And, so I sought out this Pentecostal church because I was still stuck in this framework of that's the only way to connect to God or like, become a better person. And so I had a lot in common with this pastor of the church. He had actually told me a story of how he became a pastor. He was living in this trap house in Michigan, smoking a lot of cannabis, popping pills, I think, and, just doing drugs, not on a good path. He was on this acid trip at the time, and this chessboard flew off the table, and there was one piece left standing, and it was a white king. So he saw that as a calling to go to Bible college and become a pastor, which I found pretty fascinating. I'm like, damn, that's not your average pastor story.
Like, that's the guy I want to be my pastor for sure.
Yeah. And, and the fact he was a cannabis consumer and, he was open to like, I would have private Bible studies with him and be asking him about giants in the Bible and, yes, Illuminati and all this crazy shit that most pastors would be like, what are you talking about? Or like, we're not getting into that, or I'm not going to speculate on what that is. Like, it's almost offending to some church leaders, but he was very open to it. So I went through with that, was helping out a lot for 3 years in that. And it wasn't until I had my first LSD breakthrough experience where I, totally related to where he was coming from and experienced, what he was talking about. And it made me realize like, I don't need to go to church anymore. And I had to, make amends with that. It was hard to, change what I was doing, but it just made me realize like I can, create these practices in my own life and create this pathway of communication with spirit. And whether that was through meditation, breath work, yoga, even working out, sitting with cannabis, whatever it may be, just started to dive deep into these alternative topics within spirituality. Yeah, it was a game changer for me, man. It continued my path of seeking other plant medicine experiences, still wanting to learn more, truly learning what integration meant because, for many years experimenting with plant medicine, I didn't even know what integration was. And it wasn't until I journeyed with ayahuasca where that was brought through for me, and learning about the various forms of purging, like yawning and shitting and pissing and
yes,
getting the shivers, getting goosebumps, just all these things that I was doing in previous experiences, not realizing like I was getting rid of shit that was no longer serving me, which I knew that on a subconscious level, but I didn't know that on a conscious level. So like when I was doing these things, like that's what was going on. Cause I'd always think like I yawn a lot on when I'm on psychedelics. And a lot of the times I trick myself into thinking like, all right, it's time to go to bed. Like, I'm going to be the old man passing out early at the party.
Yeah.
But, that's a form of purging. And I did really told me, she's like, I'm going to go do ayahuasca. And I didn't believe her at first. I was like, no way. Like you're going to the Amazon. And she found this place in Orlando, Florida. And sure as shit, like she had booked a retreat and she was going down. And, just the way she came back with this like newfound glow about her. And it was like it sparked something in her. And I just saw, she was a different person when she got back. And, I know there's that whole ayahuasca high 2 weeks after glow that fades away after a couple of weeks, but it was definitely noticeable. And I was like, wow, like there's something to this. And I had been curious about ayahuasca for years and always thought you had to go to the Amazon to take part in it. And I think that's the right way to go if you can afford it. But for those less fortunate, I think provided if it's the right place for you here in the States, like, it's worth the opportunity if that's your only pathway to get there. And so, many weeks later, towards the end of our relationship, we just had our differences and we decided, we were going to do a conscious uncoupling and go do ayahuasca together for her second time, my first time. And dude, it was a crazy experience to end with a breakup because, a lot of breakups go, one or two ways. And, most people are at each other's throats and refuse to ever talk to that person again, cut them completely out of their life. And other people can still communicate with them, be friends and, want their highest good and not hold on to like the resentment of ever being with that person. So it helped with a lot of that baggage and trauma and, just being able to be friends after the experience. And just blew me wide open, man, getting introduced to rape, the sacred tobacco snuff for the first time. That felt like a shotgun shell to the back of the brain. My first time
dude.
Sitting with rape.
You never forget your first time.
Yeah, dude. So that really opened me up for that weekend. But yeah, it was her introducing me to ayahuasca the first time that really opened me up, saw my true potential. It was a very terrifying experience through parts of it, taught me a lot about my strength and, what I can endure and pushing me to my limits, but also allowing me to see my true potential and realizing, my grievances and my mistakes and, seeing them in a new light that I do have the potential to change whatever I set my mind to. And these were all lessons learned to reapply next time they come up. And just so many revelations, man, of just trusting my intuition, not second guessing myself so much, taking help when it's there, when it's offered to me, and not thinking I'm too good. Like I'm always trying to be in service to others. And then I end up burnt out or empty myself because I'm not giving myself that same respect and self-love as I should. So just a lot of these things were coming up, just seeing them from new perspectives, a lot of childhood wounds in the integration sessions that would follow. We had the experience and then because you first have an intermediary integration session just to get to know everybody. And then in between experiences, you also have integration sessions with these integration coaches to talk about what came up in the experience. And shout out to Scott Irwin. He was a fabulous integration coach. He happened to be from my hometown where I live, Lincoln, Nebraska, which was such a crazy synchronicity. But now he's down in the Amazon working with a tribe down there. And he's such a beautiful soul, man. And he just, because I was just talking about all these archetypes that were coming up and he's like, cut the bullshit, man. He's like, we're going to get to the root of this experience and like what what these things meant, like why were they coming up in the way they were, and getting me to see that initial childhood wound that caused these things, like I wasn't worthy of love, or I had to do these things to receive the love I was seeking. It always had conditions set on that love that I always wanted. And, just so much came to the surface. I remember my first experience with ayahuasca. It was I was God for a while, and then I was the devil for a while. And it was like this dueling archetype, growing up in Christianity, still having a lot of this programming, to undo and, relook at, and just kind of reorganize. And it was terrifying, man, to like hold that power from both dualities and just compare and contrast those. And I saw the worst of the worst. Like it felt like you were at war together, like with all these people you were partaking with. The second ayahuasca experience brought up a lot of there's this like Abrahamic masculine god, and then there was the Mother Earth, Mother Gaia energy, and it was like the divine masculine and divine feminine. And like the mom would get jealous if I was like, on the dad's side too much, the dad would get jealous if I was, warming up to mother too much. And it was crazy, dude. It's like, which one do I choose? And it was like breaking through that illusion of you got to find the balance in between both. And we all have aspects of each of them within us. And, because in that moment, in that experience, when you're seeing these archetypes come up, it comes off so differently. And I feel like so much precedent is set with, the books you're reading and the ideas you're studying to where your mind can get to take in these experiences in the way they're meant to. Because if you're not ready, sometimes it can take you to those fearful, anxiety-ridden experiences where, all this stuff's coming up and you don't know how to deal with it, or you don't know how to respond to it. And you go into that fear mode and panic mode. But there's a lot of lessons learned through that second experience. And then, weeks after, my buddy Will, who I'd met, he was sitting on the mat next to me my first time, just had all these crystals around him, doing Tai Chi before the experience. And he was just such a fucking mystic soul, dude. I love my brother Will. And he told me he did past life regression. So I did a 5-hour past life regression hypnosis session with him over Zoom. And he's telling me about these profound 5 grams in silent darkness journeys he had. And, he talked about this one experience where this massive archetype or entity revealed himself in front of him. And as he inched closer to him, he was holding this massive sword. And as he got closer, he realized there was 2 swords, and it was Saint Michael, the archangel. And he handed him the other sword to use to fight in spiritual battle. And I was like, holy shit, dude. That's like more profound than I almost did. Like, yeah, dude, I've had crazier mushrooms on 5 grams than ayahuasca. And I was like, wow, dude, I need to check this out. And I had always heard Terrence McKenna talking about it, but I had never had the balls to go at it on my own, sit with mushrooms by myself in silent darkness. So I finally had the courage to do it. And Joy, my girlfriend at the time, she was going to do ayahuasca for the 3rd or 4th time. And I decided to sit with mushrooms in silent darkness that weekend. And, there was such profound revelations through that experience. And it was crazy how they were intertwined with the ayahuasca experiences, months before. But it was a lot of unity versus duality coming up for me. And, walking around my Akashic records, like this massive library of books where you could just open up a book to any page and you could go to a past experience or a topic you want to dive into. And, if it was giving you answers that were taking you to a creepy place, you could be like, okay, I'm going to navigate over this way and we're going to go to a different question now. Yeah. It was just a seamless experience, dude, from sober state to, that peak state of just breathing into the experience, and just totally revealed to me that bliss. And, just being able to say, dude, I'm fucking proud of you. I fucking love you unconditionally on all fucking levels. Like, you're fucking doing awesome in this life, and don't ever feel like you're not. Like whenever you're feeling down, like you have this moment to remember, to look back on and say, like, dude, don't ever get down. Like, always pick yourself up. Like, there's always a brighter day tomorrow. If it's a dark and gloomy day, like, just keep that in mind. And just so many powerful revelations in those 3 experiences and the many that came before it. But yeah, I can't thank the revelations enough and the spirit of these medicines that came through for me. And, it all started with cannabis to get me want to look further and see what other plant medicines have we been not told the full story on. So that's what got me to where I am today, brother.
What is up, everybody? I hope you are all enjoying the show, and I wanted to stop by real quick and share a little bit about our latest podcast sponsor, Freedom Builderz. Now, Freedom Builderz are a team of graphic designers, website creators, videographers, social media marketing experts, and coaches that build out your custom online business from A to Z. This is a done-for-you service, which means they do the work for you, while you get to put your focus back on what you love most, which is coaching your clients and bringing in sales. Now, as a former online fitness coach, Mike knows where your struggle points are and exactly how to help you overcome them. This is why he created Freedom Builderz, so that you can scale your business while protecting your time and your energy. Now, you guys know that delegation is a business superpower, and you can activate this superpower today by scheduling a complimentary call with Mike at freedombuilders.com, so you can start building the freedom that allows you to take your business to the next level. Alex and I recently connected with Freedom Builderz for our Connect with Cannabis build-out, and we could not have been happier with the results. With Mike and his team, they were able to go through an outline and create a personalized program for our experience, develop our brand identity, build and design a custom branded webpage, professionally edit our program video content, custom design all of our slide presentations, automate our email marketing sequences, create a seamless payment system for our offer, design unique infographics for our social media content, and guide us through our proven launch blueprint to generate organic leads through our social media. So if you're a coach, facilitator, or healer listening to this ad right now, and you are looking to put freedom back into your life, once again, go to freedombuilders.com and book your complimentary call today. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the show, and I'm wishing you the best day ever. It's so fascinating, man. And, I took a couple notes too. You talked about a lot of amazing stuff in there. And the first thing I want to bring up is you were talking about how when you interact, I think it was saying when you were with ayahuasca the first time, or maybe it was the second time, but you saw your full potential. Right. Yeah. And I think this is actually one of the things that gives people the quote unquote bad experiences or scary experiences that they wouldn't think, if someone asked them if that would give them that experience, they wouldn't think it would, but it actually does. Right. Because a lot of people, and I've had this happen in my experience, where back when I was not doing highly optimized, right, I saw a vision of myself hanging out with people like Paul Chek and whatever. And I got terrified by it, because when I came out of it, my perfectionism pattern at that point was like, it just beat me up so much. It was like, you're not there, you're way behind, that was a dream, you're never going to be able to manifest that, these kind of things. And I think that is one of the things that can actually make us, afraid, right? Is the fear of success, right? Like, whoa, yeah, if that's where I saw myself going, then, and we think about it very third dimensionally, right? Where we think, okay, I know how far it's taken me to get to, say, this point. And then you think, okay, so because I'm in space time, right? AKA it takes time to move through space in the 3D world. Because we're in that type of mindset, we think, wow, like in my case, like hanging with Paul Chek, doing podcasts, I'm like, that's going to take 10 years and I'm gonna have to get everything right and all this stuff. What I didn't realize at that point was that what I was moving into when I saw all of that was the quantum world, right? Was time, space, where everything is time. And now you get to go look through time and be able to hack the actual sequence of time in 3D. What I realized was very similar to Joe. It's like, and it's almost what Ram Dass says too. The best thing I can do for me is work on me. The best thing I can do for you is work on me. The whole idea of a lot of people try to save the external world, right? They try to, and you said something about this too, that I was going to tie into this, but looking externally to find things, right? And that's the biggest trap, because in this illusion of 3D life, so you're here and something is over there. So you think to get to that, you need to walk yourself there, right? Or take the time to learn. or go somewhere outside of yourself to get the help you need, right? A doctor, whatever else. But in reality, we have the ability to heal ourselves and manifest anything we want, but it comes from the quantum realm, which we need to shut out our outside world and our senses, because this world is only able to be navigated with the five senses. But when you go inside and you close off your outer reality, a whole new reality opens up to you. And this is another thing that I think psychedelics are here to remind us of, is that, hey, you don't need these to experience this. Yet at the same time, if you're really in the matrix, right, and you've never had a spiritual experience and people are telling you about things that we're talking about right now, the quantum realm, all of these things, you might be like, I don't know if I believe that, right? So it might take you 20, 30 years in meditation to get there. Or if you're someone who is curious about psychedelics, you go have this experience and go, okay, I guess I didn't know anything, right? And so if I don't know anything and now I've experienced things that I can't put into words, well, then maybe I should try this meditating thing and actually know that I can get somewhere with it. And so that belief is really what creates the whole, experience in itself. And the other thing you brought up was the whole idea of love, right? And how love is equal parts giving and receiving. And I know one of my biggest patterns for me has been overly giving, yet being really weird at receiving, right? And I always talk about it like when you're getting sung happy birthday, if you feel really uncomfortable about that, it's probably a sign you might be a little awkward with receiving love, right? And a lot of people have this, right? It's not like a bad thing. It's kind of like when you were making your video game character, you put more points in speed than agility, right? Or speed than strength or whatever, right? So you got more points in the giving love than receiving love. You can balance them out. It's pretty easy to do so, but the awareness is the first step. And then the last thing you were talking about that I wanted to make a point on too, to touch on, is the whole idea that if you don't have some type of awareness around what happens in a psychedelic experience, what archetypes are, what spirituality is, and then you go into that experience, it's going to be really hard for you to actually even make sense of any of it. Now, of course, when you're in that experience, especially oneness, it's really hard to make any logical sense of that because it's beyond logic. But at the same time, if you're aware of like the shadow, the ego, these kind of things, right? AKA if your intellect is aware of it and your intellect is strong, then when you go into it, if you're having a challenging experience, you could go, okay, yep, this is something in me that I'm not accepting. Okay. And so you can actually talk yourself out of having a bad experience to just a challenging experience, right? Because a challenge is something fun that you get to overcome. A bad experience is this shouldn't be happening. I should be having something else, et cetera, et cetera. And so you start going down a rabbit hole of negative stories. But I think that's really important. And that's why I'm so obsessed with learning more and more and more before every journey I go on, is because I want to be able to actually make sense out of whatever part of the journey I can make sense out of it, because that's going to directly lead to being able to integrate. And I think that's why I tell people, like, when I first started interacting with psychedelics, I didn't necessarily practice inner work. I was doing exercise, I was eating healthy. That was about it. But if I could do it all over, I would tell myself to have like a meditation practice and a breath work practice, even those two things. Because think about breath. The difference between an experience with psychedelics and an ordeal with psychedelics is your breath. Because no matter what you're going through, if you can remember to take long, slow breaths and remember that you're alive and you have control over this, then you can press the brake pedal and at least give yourself more time to handle what you might be experiencing. But if you're upregulated and you're in a sympathetic response, your body literally thinks there's a tiger next to you. And so not only is that potentially creating the challenge that you're experiencing, but it's also giving the illusion that you can't get out of the challenge, that it's happening to you and you just got to ride it out until it ends. And that's a sense of powerlessness. And nothing that I've ever experienced in psychedelics, I've never felt like anything I've experienced is meant to show me that I'm powerless, right? It's actually been the opposite. The whole idea of why you do psychedelics, why you interact with meditation, breath work, even religion, right? Spirituality, anything, is to remember that you have all the power, right? And that can be scary because, again, like you start realizing like, oh my God, everything is my fault. Everything is my response or / reaction to it that makes it what it is. So the perfect example I think that you brought up too is two people looking at a cloudy day. One person's like, oh my God, the sun's not out. I'm on vacation. This sucks. The other person's like, wow, thank God it's a cloudy day because it's hard for me to stay inside on a sunny day. And I really wanted to read this book and cozy up and drink some hot chocolate. Two people, same exact situation, totally different perception, and therefore totally different response or reaction to said influence of the world. And so psychedelics, for me, if I could put it in like one sentence, they showed me that I create my reality. They show me that no one's at fault except me, right? And that every time I am at fault, it's actually exciting, because the same way that, like, talk about chess, right? Like my dad used to whoop my ass in chess all the time. I'd get frustrated and he'd go, you only learn things when you lose. And I think you learn things both ways, but I get what he was saying. You learn a lot when you lose because your ego gets entrenched in it. And so when you come up against these challenges of like, oh, I created that. Oh my God. Oh, it's kind of weird and awkward. Well, then you go, okay, what led me to create that? What do I believe about this situation that led to me to that? And then how do I reinstill a new belief? And especially if you're on plant medicines, you're more suggestible, you're more able to access the subconscious mind. You're able to get that integrated sooner and quicker. And I think in today's fast-paced world, they can be a way where you can undo a lot of trauma without having to necessarily spend a year or two like alone going through it yourself. And so, again, I always say over and over, they're not meant for everyone, but I do think they have a lot of positive benefits that come along with them that I've experienced, you're experienced. I mean, everyone's been on the show experienced, yet it's also imperative for anyone listening to remember that it's not a given. You might have an experience that completely changes your whole view on life. I mean, I've had some experiences with 5-MeO DMT where I come out of it and I'm like, I don't even know what this means for me now. And that can be a dark night of the soul as well. Again, it's all there to help you, but you have to believe that it's there to help you. If you don't, that can, again, go from experience to ordeal very quickly.
Dude, it's fun. It's funny you pointed out the, like understanding the shadow and these aspects of yourself, like before you journey. It's kind of like a roadmap to handling these things as they come up throughout the experience. But Terence McKenna used to always say to read Carl Jung's Psychology and Alchemy book before you embark on any experience, because it is like a roadmap to understanding what's coming up for you through the experience and where it's coming from. And I have the book, but I've yet to read it. So I'm looking forward to reading it someday. I
just wrote it down too.
Yeah, I need to send you the quote. It might've been Dennis. Immediately when I heard it, I had to buy that book.
Yes.
Like, that's a immediate yes for me.
Yeah. Another book that I read recently that helped a lot, that's Jungian influenced, is King, Warrior, Lover, Magician, which for men, any man.
I was just talking about that last night.
Yeah. Any man listening to this right now, buy that. Even women too, I would imagine, because it'll help you understand men a lot more. And women have a very similar process. It's just they don't go into it in that book. It's more about divine masculine qualities. But understanding that our whole entire really existence is based off of archetypes. And really, it's like when you look into like Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey and all these things, it really helps you like see like, oh, okay, maybe I'm in the shadow archetype of the king, right? Or maybe I'm actually in the hero, which is the child version of the king. And maybe that's why I'm not making the wisest decisions, because I'm not actually including everyone into this when I'm making decisions, say as the leader of a company. I'm more like, I want to be the one that's seen as the hero. So I'm diving into it and then I'm making bad decisions for my company, versus the king that, to use this example, would look at everyone in the business and go, okay, does everyone agree on this? If anyone's not agreeing, why? Let me listen to them, right? Where the hero is like, I have an opportunity to look like the hero. I'm taking it without actually thinking it all the way through. And so very similar archetypes. One's the child version that's not full of wisdom. One's the divine masculine version that has the wisdom gained to not make decisions based off of solely egotistical type preferences. And so it's fascinating to think about this stuff. And, this is one of the reasons I love Gaia, right? Because for me, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I will read books too, but, for me, a pattern that I'm working out of is that, sometimes reading a book, I get a lot of thoughts coming up like I should be doing something else. I should be this, I should be that. Yeah. So I'm integrating that right now. But one of the things I love is getting on a Gaia and exchanging my entertainment for even like things that are, I mean, they're entertaining, but they're like, you walk away. Yeah. Like you binge a Gaia show and you walk away like, whoa, like you just essentially took steroids, like you're like, I just got really far ahead really quickly. We were talking about it before we hit record. The show I'm obsessed with right now is Rewired with Joe Dispenza. I've read all of his books, but now at the point I'm at now, I read his books like 4 years ago. And so watching it all again now, I totally get it. And it's putting together experiences for me where I've been having this experience with cannabis lately, where all of a sudden, essentially, I'm turning into pure consciousness. And the way that I was describing it is that imagine you're a sandwich and half your sandwich slides off, right? That's kind of how it felt, where I was dissociating or something like that. And it would always be when I would lay down, I was doing a meditation, and all of a sudden, boom, I just noticed like, oh, I'm not in my body. And then the second I realized that, I'd jump back into my body. But he was essentially explaining it like, no, that's when you're actually like breaking through and entering pure heart space. When you're combining that solid intention with the elevated emotion, all of a sudden you're meant to transcend and get outside of the body and dissociate. And I was like, oh, that's what I'm experiencing. And then it went from like, is this like what's happening here, to like, oh, I'm getting it, right? Like I'm actually having the experience that like I'm intentionally like telling myself I want to have, which is like the complete union, oneness, all of this stuff. It's so fascinating, man. And I just nerd out on this stuff because like psychedelics, specifically cannabis, you mentioned this earlier. Cannabis is the thing that taught me to question everything. For the first time I really started having the experience of cannabis, and like you were talking about, it took me a few times to be like, okay, what even is this effect? What does it feel like? What's the consistent, aspects of it? What are the inconsistent aspects of it? Then I was able to actually like start playing with it. And then I started being like, how do I know? I mean, this is when I'm like 17 watching Star Wars. I'm like, how do I know that Star Wars never happened? And I was like, well, I don't know, and I was like, oh, interesting. Right. I guess I don't know that. When in reality, before that, I knew, oh, it's just a movie and it's whatever, right? Doesn't mean it definitely happened, but it means that I don't know because I wasn't there. And I haven't been here all throughout the eternity of time. And so once I started questioning everything, man, life got a lot more interesting,
It's a game changer.
It is, man. It is. And, it reminds me of this quote I heard that's something along the lines of, if you're ever bored in a conversation or bored in life in general, it's because either you or someone else around you is not being as fully weird as they are, right? Because we're so weird. Like, think about the things we do. Some of the things that I see on like, Instagram or whatever, some of the memes people put up that are like, have you ever been driving down the road and noticed that anyone you look at who's walking is all of a sudden looking at you? And I'm like, whoa, I thought I was the only one that ever thought of that, right? And so starting to notice like all of these intricate things that like people share in common with you. It's so fascinating, man. This is the kind of stuff that, has really allowed life to become a psychedelic for me. I'm like, why does everyone do that? Even though I thought it was just my thing before, but actually it's not as unique as I thought. Right. And it goes back to the whole, like, well, of course we're one and we have this, morphic resonance field and the 100th monkey effect. So we're all pulling from the same collective, unconscious of information. But it's just so fascinating when you take that from something known, like you read it in a book, to something realized, something you actually like experienced for yourself. And now you can speak from that experience. It's fascinating.
Yeah, dude. And I think finding your tribe is so important. And I think, whether that's online or locally in person, like, it's so important, man, because you really are who you surround yourself with. And you're surrounded with negative Nellies that have no purpose or have no mission in life. It's a struggle not to turn out the same. And, that's harsh news for some, but I think it's inspiring news for others. And, it's what you do with that information and how you use it. Are you going to continue to just feel like the victim or become the victor of your story? Walk that hero's journey. Like Joseph Campbell said, it makes life so much more magical, and so many synchronicities pop up without you even realizing it. It becomes that psychedelic state of where life is just beautiful. And, there's an extra glow to everything. Like, you just have new eyes to see with, and, just a new perception about you. And it can change everything, man. And it's not like a miracle drug, but I think, cannabis is a good example of that. Like we were talking about earlier, you can integrate these lessons as you're still experiencing them. And I've always found it funny because people think like meditation is only experienced in the lotus pose and, with your eyes closed in pure silence on a mountaintop. But it's like, you can meditate while you're doing like mundane tasks, like doing the dishes,
Yes. Hello, everybody. I hope you are all enjoying the show. I wanted to stop by and fill you in on our brand new, completely free to join Facebook community called the Highly Optimized Ceremony Circle. I imagine many of you are aware of our newest creation within Highly Optimized, which is the Connect with Cannabis certification program. Alex and I are having so much fun empowering coaches with the skill set of coaching with cannabis and helping them up-level their coaching practice that we wanted to create a place where anyone could join to ask questions, receive free information on how to work with cannabis in the way we teach in the program, and be able to gain clarity around how to get the best results with their clients in order to become financially independent in their coaching practice. To join, hop over to the link in our Instagram bio and send us a request. It is our intention to assist as many coaches, facilitators, and healers as possible in the important work they are doing in the world. And if you are looking to join a community of like-minded individuals just like you, who are passionate about helping their clients achieve the highest quality of life possible, the Highly Optimized Ceremony Circle is for you. I am looking forward to speaking with all of you in the group, and as always, enjoy the show. When you talk to like the real yogis and the people that are like, the Tibetan monks and such, they are meditating to learn how to take that state into their daily life. And then Joe Dispenza is saying the same thing, but just a little bit differently and more able to be understood by Western cultures, where he's like, hey, your meditation practice is almost like you going to the gym to get strong for your bike race, right? So imagine the bike race is actually like life, and you go to the gym daily to make sure that you're keeping up with your strength to be able to go perform on the bike. And so your meditation practice every day is not just something you're doing to do it, right? It's something you're doing to get a reminder of what energy you want to go out in the world with and what energy is necessary to go out in the world with to have a positive life that happens for you, not to you, and all of these types of things. And I think that's like, one of the biggest switches I got when I first started meditating, and I was experiencing some stuff, but I was unconsciously rushing through it, checklist item, and then when I actually started realizing like, no, meditating is like something I look forward to every day because now I understand the why behind it. And I think for anyone listening, like for anything that, you're trying that you're like, I'm not super into it, but you keep doing it, ask yourself what your why is. Because I imagine the reason you're not enjoying it is because you're not having big breakthroughs is because your why isn't deep enough, and that goes for anything, it's like the reason that, like I said, that I meditate is because I understand that like my ability to manifest and just be happy and access happiness, right? Because happiness is innate. We don't find it. It's us, but we get convoluted and our body gets stored with emotions that then become known to us. And so when we wake up, we reach to find like the feeling that is quote unquote us. And that becomes our daily life. Every day we can expect how we're going to feel, yada, yada, unless we're working on doing something that expands our viewpoint and perception of what is possible and real for us. And that is what meditation is, what breath work is. It's literally what anything can be, right? But I think like meditation, breath work, even plant medicines, these things are the training grounds that can get us to be like, oh, okay, that's the thing. Now, how do I hold that energy when I face adversity in life, right? How do I allow someone who is actually gifting me the experience of seeing how well I am at keeping my own internal state regulated, but maybe I'm viewing it as like, oh, this person's an asshole or they're cutting me off in traffic. How do I go, wow, I guess they needed to go somewhere more than I did, and just not let anything affect our internal state? That's what meditation and breath work and all of these things really, I think their point is to allow us to be able to take that and live our lives with it,
100%, man.
Yeah, dude.
Couldn't have said it better than myself.
Yes, dude. Well, bro, this
legend, brother.
Dude, game recognized game, man. Dude, I get into the best flows with you, man, and we could go for hours, but dude, I want to make sure that I give you a chance before I forget to tell people where they can find you, where they can find the ascension of the chessman, any new stuff you have coming up you want to lay. Where can people find you, man? Where can they get in touch with you?
Hey, man, I appreciate the opportunity and thank you so much for having me. You can find me on all audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, Spreaker is my hosting site, but pretty much wherever podcasts are found. I'm just purely doing audio right now. I have a couple things up on my channel, but yeah, you can find me on social media at Andre Mytty on Facebook, Dre Live for Today on Instagram. Yeah, I got some pretty awesome shirts. If anyone's interested, you can check out those designs on my social media. Still working on building a website someday and, just trying to be the best person I can be on a daily basis. But, I'm truly honored to be here and, to be able to get to do what I do and share my conversations with the world. So thanks for listening today, whoever's out there listening. And, if you want to check out my show, I appreciate it because, I'm just doing it to further the conversation. Let's talk about these things. Let's not just shove them in a corner and keep them taboos. Like, let's bring them out in the open and just become our best selves.
Yes. And we went on your podcast too, right? We traded, right? We did both.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I was on Andre's podcast and it was so much fucking fun. Definitely go check that out. Is that live yet? They went live, right?
Yeah.
I went live a while ago. And it's funny for everyone listening.
Cannabis. I forget the episode number. But
yeah.
that was what I called it.
Hell yeah, dude. And for everyone listening, it's really funny because Andre and I filmed his highly optimized episode, got probably like 2-3 months back. It was a while back.
Yeah, it was a while back.
Yeah. And I had so many episodes done for highly optimized that literally his episode is coming out this Wednesday. And literally your episode on this podcast is coming out Friday. So you guys are going to get a whole dose of Andre. And I am so excited because we dove into a lot of subjects between both these podcasts, man. I'm really pumped.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Wait, brother.
Yes. Well, dude, I got one last question for you too. If someone listening was just swayed by you to experience psychedelic medicines for the first time, what is the one piece of advice that Andre Mytty would suggest to them to allow them to have the smoothest experience possible?
I would say surrender with complete love and know that whatever happens was meant to happen for your highest evolution. And yeah.
I love it, dude. Beautiful. Spoken like the true wizard you are, man. Okay, guys. Yeah, like I stated in the intro, when Andre and I first connected, I immediately felt my battery be charged by his presence, and I was stoked to be able to feature him on the shows, as I truly feel one of the best kept secrets of podcasting and listening to podcasts is the ability to have heart-centered individuals charge the batteries of everyone listening by speaking that heart-centered energy directly into the ears, hearts, and souls of those listening. My hope for everyone listening to this episode is that you take the incredible stories, experiences, and results Andre has received from his plant medicine experiences and are able to gain passion and inspiration from them that can directly apply to your own journey in life. I truly believe that one of the best self-development practices we can take part in is learning from those individuals that we resonate with. And when we are able to do this, our lives can blossom with more magic, energy, and love, all of which are necessary if we wish to integrate our psychedelic experiences from PEAK experiences, which fade after our ceremony, to PEEK experiences, which allow life itself to become psychedelic in nature. Andre, thank you so much for sharing your time with me on a Sunday to record this epic magic, for doing the important work you do in the world at large, and for being a source of inspiration in my life. And until next time, my brother, may your journey be smooth and full of light. Aho.
Much love. Aho, brother.